All right, so you wanted to really get into it, huh? A deep dive into the Bhagavad Gita. And we're talking the very beginning, which is fascinating to me. You've got military strategy, we've got some serious family drama, and it just throws you right into this philosophical crisis.
And it all starts, of course, on the battlefield. Kurukshetra. You got to imagine the scene.
Mm-hmm.
The dust, the chariots, two families, the Kauravas and the Pandavas, about to go head-to-head. Cousins, by the way, deciding the fate of everything they know.
And our narrator for all this is Sanjay, right? And he really sets the scene. We've got Duryodhana, he's the Kaurava leader, and Sanjay describes him, well, he's practically vibrating with nervous energy as he's pointing out all the Pandava warriors to his teacher, Dronacharya.
It's more than just a king sizing up his enemies, though, right? I mean, Duryodhana actually names each warrior one by one. Bhima, Arjuna, Satyaki. He goes into their lineage, their skills, their reputation. It's all very deliberate.
Okay, I can see how that's intense, but why is that detail so important? Seems a little extra for a guy about to lead an army into battle.
Because it really highlights the tragedy of this whole thing. Think about it. Duryodhana isn't facing some nameless, faceless enemy. These are his relatives, friends, people he's known his whole life. Some of them were his teachers. That personal connection, all that shared history, makes the stakes so much higher for everyone involved, both sides.
And then you've got the way Duryodhana describes his own army. It's all unbeatable, invincible, led by the mighty Bhishma, of course. But I don't know, am I imagining it, or is there this tremor of doubt under all of that bravado?
Oh, it's there. It's subtle, but it's definitely in the text. You get this sense of Duryodhana grasping for certainty, like maybe even trying to convince himself that this war where he's already outnumbered, is actually justified.
So we've got these two massive armies staring each other down. The tension is palpable. What happens next? I gotta know.
The conch shells sound.
Oh, yeah, the famous conch shell. So they just, what, blow some horns and everyone charges?
Not quite. This isn't just noise,
Yeah.
right? The Pandavas, they've got conch shells with names like Anantabhichaya, means endless victory, and Pandra means terrifying.
Oh, wow. So it's like psychological warfare.
Absolutely. Imagine that for a second. You're a soldier on that field. You hear those names blasted out. You can feel the ground shaking. It's a statement, like a sonic assault meant to get in the enemy's head before the fighting even starts.
I can see how that would be unnerving. But wouldn't it also, I don't know, psych out Duryodhana's own men? I mean, hearing all that coming from the other side?
Of course.
Right.
It works both ways. Those conch blasts, they're also there to bolster the courage of everyone on both sides. Drown out the doubt, the fear that's bubbling under the surface. Because even the most seasoned soldier, deep down, they know. Today might be the day death is waiting for them on the battlefield. Which brings us to Arjuna, the great Pandava hero. And he asks Krishna, that's his charioteer, to drive him out into the no man's land between the armies.
Bold move. So I'm guessing, what, he's going to, taunt Duryodhana, try to get in his head a little before the fighting starts?
Not quite. On the surface, sure, it looks like a strategic move, the chance to size up the enemy, assess their position, but that's not what hits Arjuna.
Okay, so what's going on?
He sees them, the faces of the people he's about to fight. And it's not just soldiers, right? He sees his great-grandfather Bhishma, who practically raised him. He sees his teacher Drona, this great warrior, but also a mentor, someone he loves, cousins, uncles, friends, people he's shared meals with, trained with, laughed with, and they're all there, on the other side, ready to kill him.
Man, that's got to be a punch in the gut. To see your own family turned enemy, ready to fight to the death.
And the text doesn't shy away from that. It really describes Arjuna's physical reaction to this. His limbs go weak, his mouth dries up, his skin burns, he can barely stand. It's visceral.
Wow, so this isn't just in his head, right? This realization, it's like breaking him down physically.
Exactly. This isn't some difference of opinion. This is an existential crisis, and it shakes him to his core. And this is where we see Arjuna's dilemma really come into focus, because he starts listing all the things that are supposed to come with victory, right? The wealth, the power, the glory, even victory itself. And he basically says, what good is any of it if I have to kill my own family to get it?
He's weighing the cost of victory, his duty as a warrior versus the potential sin of basically destroying his family.
And this is where those big concepts of karma and dharma come into play, because Arjuna is not just worried about what happens now, right? Yeah. He's thinking about the karmic repercussions of his actions. He's caught between his dharma as a warrior, his duty to fight for justice, for what's right, and his dharma as a grandson, a nephew, a friend. How do you reconcile those two things? How do you choose?
Talk about an impossible situation. I mean, have you ever felt that kind of pull? That conflict between what you're supposed to do and what feels right in your heart.
I think it's a universal struggle, don't you? We may not all be facing armies on a battlefield, but we all encounter those situations where our values are tested, our sense of duty, where we have to choose between what's expected of us and what we believe is right, even when that choice comes at a personal cost.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's like all that bravado, all those conch shells blasting out victory, it all kind of falls apart when you think about the real cost of war, especially when it's your own family you're talking about.
And that's exactly what makes Arjuna's struggles so powerful, right? So relatable, even thousands of years later, because he's not just going through the motions, he's really wrestling with this, the deeper questions, the moral gray areas of war. Even in a battle for justice, you can't just ignore that stuff. He's dealing with something that goes way beyond time and place.
And that, well, it all kind of comes to a head in those verses you mentioned, right? Verses 45 through 47.
Right. Arjuna is just, I don't know, overwhelmed by all of it. The weight of it all, this impossible choice.
Yeah.
And he breaks down. He literally throws down his weapons, the tools of his dharma as a warrior,
Yeah.
and says, I would rather be killed right here, right now, than fight this war.
Wow. That's a powerful image. You've got this warrior, this hero, brought down not by some enemy, but by his own conscience, by his own sense of right and wrong.
Exactly. And that's what the Bhagavad Gita is making us think about, right? What does real courage look like? Is
Yeah.
it just blindly following your duty, even when it goes against everything you believe in? Or is it about having the guts to question, to maybe choose a different path, even if it means going against what everyone expects of you?
Man. And that choice, that struggle, that's something we can all relate to. Maybe we're not on a battlefield, but I think we all have those moments where you have to decide what you're willing to fight for, what lines you won't cross, even when it's hard, even when it makes you question everything you thought you knew.
And that's the thing about these ancient texts, right? They're not just stories. They're like mirrors. They reflect our own battles back at us, our own search for meaning. The Bhagavad Gita reminds us that the most important battles, the ones that really matter, sometimes those are the ones we fight within ourselves.